First off, thank you to the AUB, to Rania for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here and sort of guide the discussion this morning on AI. You already introduced me, what I do, and I'll talk just quickly a little bit more about myself, but I'm joined by fantastic panelists from the AUB community. I'm going to say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce them with an interesting tidbit that I found in their bios rather than give you the whole bio. They're going to talk about themselves later on. So we have Bassam, who what stood out to me was he's got 25 plus years of experience in information governance and privacy, and I think that's going to be something that we can take a deeper dive on as we look at the future of AI. We've also got Hazem with us, who is an assistant professor at AUB in electrical and computer engineering and has worked as a principal engineer at Intel. He's got quite a few patents there and lots of interesting things from his background. We're looking forward to hearing his comments. We've also got Roy with us, who his passion for software started at the age of 14, where he built his first AI program. So ask him questions on that and everything else that he thinks about how AI has evolved and what it will be in the future. And we've got Imad with us, who served on the World Economic Forum Global Agenda Council on AI and robotics. So again, conversations at a global level, so looking forward to hearing his perspective. He's also incubated the first startup at AUB, and I was very excited to see that. I love when you have the entrepreneurial spirit at university. So really looking forward to our conversations. I'm going to do a quick intro just to set the stage of what some of these issues are. Most of us have heard about the positives of AI, all the tremendous gains in terms of medicine, in terms of logistics, travel, that are going to come about in terms of finance and everything else. But there are some places where we need to be careful. So I'll preface with that, and then we'll move on to the panel itself, the panel presentations. So really quickly, I'm the founder of the Montreal AI Ethics Institute. I also do AI ethics research at McGill. And as of about 2.5 months ago, I started working in machine learning at Microsoft. The institute itself, I want to say a couple of words on that. The institute is a home for concrete technical and policy research in AI ethics. So there's a lot of talk on why we need to be thinking about privacy, why we need to be thinking about social inclusion and safety in AI systems, but there's little in terms of technical tools, in terms of policy frameworks that we can go and apply today to some of the research work and industry developments that we're doing, and the Montreal AI Ethics Institute is a home for that research. I also run a fabulous meetup community here in Montreal that invites people from all sorts of backgrounds, and that's where I met Rania. And the community itself is a home for people from all sorts of backgrounds coming and discussing these issues of ethics, safety, and inclusion in AI, because we need perspectives from a diversity rather than have a concentrated group of people from one domain trying to come at those conclusions. Fantastic. All right, so I guess we're running a little bit late on the time, so I'll disregard that. But roughly, this is the format we're going to follow. We're going to try and leave as much time as possible for the Q&A. And there's maybe a bit of a change in the format in terms of opening up the questions right after the panelists' presentation. So I believe Elena has handed you cards already. Please feel free to write questions as we're going along, things that you found we didn't talk about or that you wanted to know more about, or other questions that are burning in your mind, and I will jump right into that as soon as we're done with the presentations. Okay, so I'll give you a second to read that quote. So this quote is very interesting because when we look at the AI systems today, what's interesting to note is that these are narrow AI systems and not general AI systems. So they do very well in a specific domain compared to humans. So it could be playing the game of code, could be diagnosing MRI images, et cetera, but they don't have a generic way of translating intelligence across a multitude of domains. So we need to be very careful when we're talking about AI and when we're describing AI, because these computers are too stupid because they're smart in a very narrow sense of the domain, and they sort of ignore the social and ethical consequences as we're deploying those systems. And why does it matter? I mean, we've always had technological revolutions. So what's important is to think about the scale and pace of impact as AI technologies are being deployed compared to what's come in the past, because that's where we see a key difference, where I guess I can hear my own reverb in live stream, which is exciting, or the recording. So the scale of impact is interesting because AI is pervading all domains. If you're familiar with Sophia the robot, you've also heard of AI being used in medicine, AI being used in self-driving cars, AI being used in finance, and any domain that you work in, you probably have heard someone mention, hey, we should try out this machine learning thing. Seems to be doing some interesting things there. And the pace of impact is also accelerated quite a bit from the perspective of translating research from academia to industry. The gap has shortened quite a bit, where anything that you see happening in research quickly shows up in products and services. And so that's another case for why this is slightly different from previous technological revolutions. I'll skip the part maybe on behavior nudging by just making a brief mention on how our conversation styles can be hijacked when you see prompts for different auto replies in Gmail. So how many of you use Gmail here? Okay, literally everybody. So Google is going strong. So I don't know if you've seen if you see it on the image on the left, there are those small auto reply options that you've started to see in the new version of the app. And it's been there for close to a year now. From a psychological perspective, it starts to nudge our conversations in particular directions, and it sort of chips away at our own agency to craft our conversations and in a sense erode the richness of those conversations. And they took it a step further with the Google I/O conferences here with Smart Compose, which sort of auto fills out what you would have said, and you just tab and auto complete it. So again, chipping away at our agency. The impact on children, I'll skip that. It's a longer example. You can come and ask me about it after. Basically, there were increasingly macabre videos being auto-generated and published on YouTube Kids, which is a curated platform which is supposed to be safe from HBO-type content, and yet it wasn't because the platform algorithm was hijacked. This I'll maybe spend 30 seconds on. The robustness of mission-critical systems. So when we're looking at a system that is in a self-driving car, as an example, it is quite important that we have pedestrian safety in mind. You don't want to be killed by a self-driving car, or maybe you do. If you're the first person, you'll go down in history books. At least I don't. I want to see it all the way to the end. But you can fool a machine learning system. So if you see the stop sign, it's got little strips of tape on it. And what will appear like graffiti to us actually triggers an adversarial response in the machine learning system to the point where it doesn't look like a stop sign to it, and the car just keeps going. So that obviously triggers quite a bit of questions on pedestrian safety and the safety of these systems. Same thing goes for the image on the right, where now we can introduce Gaussian noise into the background of the image and fool not only machine learning systems but also humans, so essentially creating optical illusions. So in this case, making a cat or making a dog look like a cat, or the other way around, as your visual system is fooled. I'll just say this here, that deep fakes, how many of you heard of that? It was a big deal October, November last year. Okay, really quickly, what they were able to do was to take the face of someone and graft that onto a live video or just a video recording, and it can be used to do many sorts of nefarious things. The first use, of course, the internet being creative, was for pornography. So to take revenge or to do anything, basically try to defame someone, becomes quite convincing and easy. Machine learning can adopt the status quo. What's interesting to see here is that our societal stereotypes and biases do get captured as you're training these machine learning systems. So, the example here was that it tends to associate words like kitchen and suing more to women, and being an engineer or hardworking more to men. And that's obviously not true, but the system doesn't know any better, and learning from the corpus of historical data just embeds those biases, so we need to be careful about those as well. And governance is quite important, and I guess we'll touch on that with the expertise that we have on the panel. But this example was where black people were flagged as gorillas in Google Photos for a long time, and they weren't able to correct that because they did not have sufficient training examples to delineate the sort of different skin tones in human faces. More recently, I think some of you might have heard of Google Duplex in terms of having sort of automated agents making bookings on your behalf. And what's going to be interesting, and hopefully we'll bring that up as a question on the panel or from the audience as well, should it be necessary to disclose our humanity as we're on those systems? I'll skip that. It's a comic. You can come and ask me after if you're interested. It's about the Turing test. Hopefully some of you know about that. Diversity, again, I mentioned it's very important. I'm actually speaking with the person mentioned here in this photograph, Timnit Gebru, at a panel in Ottawa in a couple of weeks. It's very interesting that this wasn't a thing that the AI community being so open was yet not inclusive in terms of the backgrounds of the people working in the field. So some interesting ideas there. I'd just like to leave you with three main ideas on inclusion, explainability, and governance, which I think are going to be key as we move forward. And this is just a snapshot from what I believe public consultation in the domain of AI ethics can look like. This is the group that I run, people coming from all sorts of backgrounds, meeting in different places in Montreal to take a deep dive on different aspects like accountability, transparency, responsibility, ethics, privacy, many of these issues that fall under this domain. That's me really quickly, and I will hand it over for presentations now so that we can get started. And then we'll, again, I'll just mention again, please make sure to write questions as you're going along because we're going to use that as soon as we're done with the presentations. So yeah, looking forward to it.
So my name is Bassam Zarkout. I live in Ottawa, so I didn't come from very far. I'm a mechanical engineer, finished in 1977. And I'm a professional career changer. I'm on my third career change, or second career change, triggered by my late friend, Maroon Samaan, who convinced me I should go into IoT, Internet of Things, and AI. I'll give a high-level overview of AI, and I'll leave it to the panel, the other panelists, to go into specific aspects of these areas. So I'll just walk very quickly through AI. So AI has been around for a while. Alan Turing, the father of computing, said in the 50s that we should consider the question, can machines think? And we've seen a gradual evolution of computing power over the past 50 years that is bringing us to a point where computers are now powerful enough and smart enough to start doing really intelligent things. So I'll talk about AI a bit in AI in healthcare, transportation, industry, retail, art, finance, and I'll touch a little bit on employment, and then my colleagues here on the panel will go into detail. So Singularity University in California focuses on disruptive technologies, and they define disruptive as a technology that will impact the lives of 1 billion people in 10 years. Anything that doesn't meet that requirement is not disruptive. And they're saying that there is an evolution of computing power and availability of data that is reaching a point whereby in about 20 years, the laptop that you buy for $1,000 will be as intelligent and as powerful as the human mind. And 20 years later, the $1,000 laptop that you buy will be more powerful than all humanity combined. This is ominous. This is not far away from where we are today. And this is going to impact a lot of changes in society that we hope this panel is going to shed some light on. So AI in healthcare, New York University has been collaborating with Facebook to analyze MRI images and predict conditions. Also, AI is being used in New York University to identify cancer types much better, or at least as good as human doctors. In China, AI is being used to predict if and when a coma patient will wake up from his coma. Would you trust AI in your healthcare? AI in transportation. Yesterday, I drove from Ottawa. I turned on the autonomous driving mode in my car. It drove around the contours of the highway by itself. It adjusted the speed to the speed of the traffic. It's pretty powerful. Obviously, I still have my hands on my steering wheel, but we are maybe 10 years away from a fully autonomous car. Text and drive. Imagine, text and drive. I participated in this MIT moral test, whereby they ask you about 20 or 30 questions. They show you different scenarios of what the autonomous car should do in the following situations. One of them, should it hit 3 children and 2 pets versus hitting 3 adults? Not easy questions to answer. What should the autonomous car do? Hit the 5 babies or the 5 adults? 5 women or 5 men? Men. So, important questions. They're not easy to answer. I tell you, they became harder and harder to answer. AI in industry, an area close to my heart. I was having a chat with a gentleman from ABB, Asia Boveri, which is a large industrial company in Sweden and Switzerland. And he was saying that they sell robots for warehouses to Amazon. And those robots, they've put them in cages so that they don't interact with humans, and because to avoid accidents. And that was not very cost effective. So now they put humans in cages. Think about that. The humans are in the cage, in a small cage on the floor, whereas robots will roam through the warehouse and do the work. Retailers are using AI. They know more about you than you can even imagine. The moment you walk in the retail store, an AI engine could recognize your face, determine your full history, monitor your movements in the shop. If you pull an item off the shelf and put it back, somebody will ask you at the cash, why didn't you buy it? Is it because of price? Is it because wrong brand? And they will make you offers there and then. So AI is being used in many, many ways in a totally transparent manner that we're not even aware of. Robots, AI-driven robots being used in drones to deliver products to people. AI in finance, mortgage loan approvals, credit scoring, fraud detection, and so on and so forth. Banks are heavily investing in AI to see how they can improve their trading. And apparently, AI-driven trading is achieving much better success than people expected. Art. This is a piece of music composed by an AI engine, played by humans. So one important point here is the Turing test. If you listen to that piece of music without being told that this is an AI engine that composed it, would you have guessed? Yeah, and this is today. Imagine in 10 years, in 20 years. I saw a video of IBM's AI engine doing a summary of a movie in 1 minute, taking the important screenshots of the movie and summarizing it and presenting it. This is very impressive. Obviously, jobs. We have to talk about jobs, and we'll be talking about jobs later. The Luddites. Who have heard of the word Luddites? Well, the Luddites in the 19th century, when in England they started putting steam-powered loom machines, they displaced a lot of workers. And these became very angry, and they went on a rampage in the UK, destroying factories and burning them. The problem that we're facing with AI today, and we have to be conscious about it, is that this transition is going to happen much faster than what happened 200 years ago. And we need to be careful about the employment issues. Job interviews.
Hello, my name is Vera, and I'm a robot. And what's your name?
Hi, my name is Jason Bellini. This is Vera, a robot that does job interviews.
What are the 3 top important tips for a salesperson?
She's done 10,000 of them and counting.
Congratulations. We chose you as one of the best candidates for a sales representative.
What looks like the future is already a reality. Hiring is undergoing a revolution. Almost all Fortune 500 companies now use some form of automation.
She keeps winking at me and then rolling her eyes at me.
And obviously, no presentation about AI would be complete without Sophia, the robot. And she's a citizen of Saudi Arabia. And there is a reason for that. I'll stop that. So one quick word. As more and more work is being done by AI, there is the question of who's going to pay taxes for that work. If we're not doing the job and AI engine is doing the work, who's paying taxes? So this is important. And that's the reason why they made it a citizen, because a citizen must pay taxes. So these are questions that we've never faced in. And obviously, AI is going to impact our region as well. And there's lots of investment going into AI in the Gulf and some of it in Egypt as well. Okay. That's what I wanted to say in the introduction. And then
So I want to say I'm extremely thankful for the invitation, AUB, for the support, and extremely exciting to be among AUB alumni. It's extremely refreshing. I feel proud, for being among, what I say, our own gang. It makes me proud actually to be working at AUB and seeing the support from the alumni. It's really brings a lot of positivity into us at AUB when we see alumni support. So we thank you for that. So what I want to talk about is basically when I was preparing this, I'm thinking, what's in it for you? What would you want to hear about? Okay, I think there's a lot of information. I thank Mr. Bassam for his exciting presentation. And there are things actually I keep hearing about that I've not heard about. But there's a lot of stuff you guys know about. So I thought about maybe just bringing in things that, what's going on at AUB. So that's what I'd like to focus on. And I'll try to contribute to the questions. AI at AUB has been around for a long time, actually. I joined AUB in 2008, but it's been around for a lot of time. A lot of faculty are working on it. Is it okay? That's much better now. Okay. I'm usually loud anyway, so I thought maybe. So AUB, has been focusing on AI. Some numbers, I think most of you know this, but just to share, it's cut from here, but from the other side, AUB is still ranked #1 in the region. We've got about 9,000 students on campus, about 850 full-time faculty, over 130 plus degree programs. From where I come from, I'm from the school of Maroon Samhan, Faculty of Engineering and Architecture. And we consider ourselves a powerhouse in the AI, but as you'll see from the theme of the presentation, we're not the only ones at AUB doing AI. A lot of departments, a lot of faculties are doing that. At MSFEA, we have 102 professional ranked faculty, about 2,500 undergraduate students, about 500 graduate students. And you can see, I'm not sure if this is a healthy percentage, but relative to the communities at large, this is a healthy percentage of female presence, which we're very happy with. And I think it has to do with Lebanon as a culture, actually. It's not just us. So my kids actually, maybe I have 2 girls, 1 boy. The 2 girls may end up being in engineering, and so we'll see, maybe all of them. So what is AI? I did not want to repeat, and I didn't know actually Mr. Bassam would do this, but that was great because I wanted to bring AI to a personal level. So what is AI for us? I mean, what do I see? It's moving fast, it's easy, it's fun, it's exciting. We can do a lot of stuff. I mean, when I joined AUB in 2008, after being at Intel for a while, to me, working with AI was like a playground. Oh, I can do this. I had a group of students, taking Imad's robots, actually, and building a robot that can go around to like traffic signals, and then they can just, connect with each other and decide who would go first. Kind of what self-driving vehicles are trying to do now. And my parents in Lebanon, they're a little bit older, they would ask me, so what are you doing at AUB? I said, so I tried to describe the project. I say, they got these robots. They come to a traffic light and they negotiate. I say, come on, stop joking. What exactly are you doing? Anyways, it's a fun thing. A lot of things can do it. My kids, he's 14 years old, in school. He's been doing AI for the last 2 years. He can do a machine that folds clothes automatically. He can do a recycling bin that can decide what to place bins. At a personal level, you guys have all seen it. I was trying to find a flight to Austin, Texas last year, and then somehow Facebook realized I was looking for one and gave me a recommendation to go to Houston for a 750 round trip from Beirut. That's a pretty good deal. So, so there's some good things in there. YouTube tells me what I should watch. This other thing tells me where events in Beirut that I should go to. When I was in Austin, I found a very good deal on shoes. So it was great. I mean, a lot of good things. So let me talk about AI at AUB. So this is going to be a discussion that I will start, Imad will finish. So I'll talk about some of those aspects, and Imad will wrap it up. So we got major focus on Arabic technologies. The one on the left here is one of my colleagues. Actually, he's trying to look at pictures and text and see how can they correlate together, and if we can recognize the emotion triggered from these texts. The one on the right, anyone recognizes this specific issue of An-Nahar? Everybody recognize this? Okay, so so I tried to mention, I'll leave this to President Khoury actually to say more about this hopefully this evening. But this is an amazing contribution from AUB. I kind of wanted to say this is an AI contribution. Just, we're providing more data for machine learning to figure out what we want in Lebanon for the future. So machine learning will take this newspaper and will predict what Lebanon should do, or maybe it will just do it for us. Anyways, we also have colleagues in computer science looking at making OCR and newspapers more readable. So my own contribution in this field has been with a major project with other colleagues in computer science, working on technologies for Arabic to actually develop resources that enables more research on Arabic, developing AI models for predicting sentiments and opinions, kind of what Cambridge Analytica did for Trump. But you know, our goal was noble. This obviously can be misused. And we brought actually a software system also that can be used. Another area that at AUB we're working on is developing AI for personal context, for personal use. So there, my colleagues actually in across actually in computer science, in business school, in civil engineering, you can see a lot of people contributing to this. So on the left side, we've got emotion recognition work that we can recognize from faces. We've got a colleague in civil engineering trying to figure out how people should make decisions by combining machine learning and other kind of standard methods. We've got a person working on traffic control, automated decisions. We've got a colleague in business school trying to figure out how to have machine learning adapt to user behaviors and environment. My own work on this is in the area of IoT and context-aware sensing and building a platform that could basically take wearable sensors that we may have and be able to recognize anything. I mean, ultimately, this is the ultimate thing, recognize anything that we may be doing, who we may be with, and then the machine will ultimately do things on our behalf. So, you know, if I'm in a meeting, then, you know, the phone will turn itself on. If I'm supposed to take on new projects, the machine will just go ahead and negotiate those for me and so on. You know, this is partly present and partly future, but this is an area that's gaining interest also in the industry. There's a lot of work actually for humanitarian purposes and society. So on the left side, again, you see one of the work on disaster, automatic recognition, and this will help in response and figuring out where we need to send the response best. There's a lot of work on the refugees, and we're going to be talking more about the refugees, I believe, this afternoon. But we also have some AI being deployed to actually figure out the mobility, the demand of health for refugees, where Red Cross should be deployed at particular times. We also have, you know, a look at the electricity in Lebanon, and this is an illustration of what we may see in some places in Lebanon. Unfortunately, we're still far from having a resilient and reliable electricity system, so hopefully we can use AI to help in this process. My own contribution in this is more on the mobile health side, so we got these devices on a person's back, and that could capture how well their posture, they're sitting around and not hurting themselves. We had drones flying at AUB to recognize who's supposed to be there and who's not supposed to be there. The head of security, we just have a new head of security now at AUB, did not allow me to actually have this flying everywhere. He was concerned people would get annoyed and maybe, you know, say this is private, I don't want to see it. Anyways. And finally, in terms of advances, and I'll let you know, Imad again talk more about some of these advances we have. We are also working on the Maroon Samaan Faculty of Engineering Architecture on platforms, computing platform to make AI faster. As Bassam mentioned, actually, a lot of the just sudden growth in AI and machine learning had to do with computing becoming faster and faster, and that enabled the emergence of one of the hot fields right now, which is deep learning in the last 10 years. And the reason is actually making computers faster, and there's still room to make them more. So we have work on making the cloud computing, what you see right now on Amazon or Google or Microsoft Azure, and use specifically what's called field programmable gate arrays, which are hardware that you can configure with software, and to make these fast platforms work for deep learning and integrate them with the cloud. So the cloud itself becomes much faster and with lower energy. And we also worked on the nodes themselves and making deep learning run faster on individual nodes. So the cloud would be faster by integrating it with these nodes, and the nodes would be faster because we redesigned them. And this was actually of high interest to Intel. This is the one on the right was a project that we did for Intel just last year. And and overall, both of these had major support from also the Qatar National Research Foundation and Intel. Finally, I was also asked to answer 2 questions, or at least briefly mention what they would be. So, what are there ethical concerns with AI? And I will just be brief with those. The discussion will go on. And I'm assuming a lot of you have your own opinions that are actually probably much more important than mine and much more educated than mine, but I'll just share my own perspective. I think AI is awesome, okay? I truly do. Maybe it will help save world hunger. I'm not sure I would like to think it will. I definitely think this is no doubt we will see things never imaginable. I mean, if you go back 10 years and you think about what we're seeing today, these were never imaginable, so we will see that. But I think this technology will come with risks, and it's coming with risks. I think it's intrusive. I mean, maybe disruptive. I think it's stealth. I mean, we're not feeling it. It's coming. It's smart. I think actually, Abi said it's narrowly smart. I think it's smarter than we think it is. And I can talk more about this. I think it's obscure. We don't know exactly what's going on. You think we researchers know exactly these models that I developed? Why? When I see a document that President Khoury wrote, why this is, it's supposed to be positive or negative feelings about things? I really don't know. I mean, this thing learned from a lot of data, from a lot of variations. The equation is so complex. I mean, if I were to look at it and see, I can see why the equation came out with a positive number, but why does this, why? I mean, why does this text really indicate positivity or negativity? It's obscure. I mean, we don't know why they're making those decisions. It's fast, it's moving fast, it's complex. And let me just tell you a personal story why I think it's scary. I shared this with a couple people yesterday at the reception. 2 years ago, I mean, I've been going to Austin, Texas almost every year. 2 years ago, I wanted to go and rent an apartment just for the summer. And a year before that, I had spent the whole year my leave there at the University of Texas, Austin, and I was able to get, a reasonable deal on my apartment, about $2,100 a month. And when I went for the summer, I went to the same place. They said for the summer it's about $4,000. And I said, come on, what do you mean 4,000? He said, basically this is what it is. So I go to another place and another place and another place, and finally got fed up. I want to know why this thing is happening. And I just, all these nice apartment complexes, they have, their apartments, a lot of empty places, right? But their price is 4,000. So I go to, and I say, I want to talk to the manager now. I'm just, why is this happening? So the manager comes, he's courteous, yes, can I help you? And I say, yes, I do have a question. I've lived here in Austin for a year, and I look at your brochure, it says $1,700 per month for rent, but now when I come to ask you for 3 months, you're telling me it's 4,000. Why? He says, well, that's what the system says. So I have to go with what the system says. And I'm just, that was just kind of an eye-opener. The system says, I mean, what does that mean? Why is the system telling you 4,000? Is this what I'm actually creating, these machine learning algorithms to actually go and now make decisions that people do not understand, that I have to just be subject to, that I have no say in? I mean, it was just eye-opener. So I think there's threats at all levels. I think there's threats at the individual level. There's the threat actually of data being used without us knowing. There's actually possibly the personal safety threat. I mean, cars hitting people, right? I mean, we've seen that with self-driving cars. There's the societal impact, the Cambridge Analytica example. There's actually possibly, I mean, this is a philosophical discussion, a threat to humanism, right? I mean, we're making decisions now. Robots could make decisions. So are we, moving to something else? I think the picture is not all gloom and doom. I think, we just have to deal with this. I think there's a great opportunity for humanity. Is it worth it? I think it is, definitely. But anyways, we don't have a choice, so we have to deal with it. Can we do something about it? This is my last slide, and I will stop here. I think the change is fast and risky. And I think science fiction is real. It's no more science fiction. We've seen acceleration. Cars can self-drive. I can talk to my PC. I can talk to my phone. I think we have to do something. I think we have to protect us. I think we, as researchers, as academicians, we need to protect us. I think Abby's work seems excellent in this direction. I think, you know, what Alan Turing said, you know, can machine think, long time ago? I think, you know, more than that, we've been excited about this question, and we've been, you know, working on it for a long time. I think we've been saying, can we make it? And it's been a playground, and it's exciting, and we don't stop to actually think about what's going on. And it's been exciting, and we've been thinking about, can we make it? And we've been making it, and there's more yet to come. But I think we need to move as, you know, academicians to say, can we take it? Do we understand where this is, you know, what this is going to do and the impact? So I think this is what, you know, we have to move forward with, you know, maybe at least balance the can we make it, but can we take it? And then, you know, help, you know, as academicians, protect all of us, make it aware of actually what it will do. Thank you. By the way, I just had a few things I just want to mention. We have now an AI club at AUB. It's got about 100 membership, strong and growing. If you want to know about the future of technology and AI, there's I'm sure some of you may have seen it, the Gartner Hype Report. We've got work also on mixed reality that I forgot to mention. Maybe Ahmad, this is also some of the work Ahmad works on, so maybe he'll talk about that. The World Economic Forum, you know, President Khoury was there. Again, maybe, you know, maybe I'm suggesting a few things, you know, President Khoury could talk about it this evening. They call this the fourth industrial revolution, and there's significant impact on the employment. So maybe we'll hear more about this yesterday. There's a lot of calls about, you know, the doom, you know, Elon Musk and what have you. By the way, the last thing I want to say, you know, Sophia, the AI Club tried to bring Sophia to AUB. And guess how much they wanted to charge us for the trip? $35,000. Wow. And it was just for, you know, Sophia riding a plane and getting, you know, the guy who comes with Sophia was $1,000, but Sophia was $35,000.
In the cargo section, and she'll travel in the cargo section.
And yeah, I don't know where she's traveling.
Not first class.
Thank you.
So we're going to have Roy present on the promise of artificial intelligence.
Thank you. Hi, good morning. My name is Ramzi Laban. I'm a 93 graduate at CCE. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I think this is a great panel. It's a great subject that we're discussing. Yeah. I would love that, Mike, yeah. So I'm, can we, yeah. Good now? Hi, hello? No? Sure. Hey, okay, it's working, fine, good. Okay, so what I'm gonna talk about today is the promise of artificial intelligence. I think the two speakers before me covered a lot of ground. I'm going to skip some of the slides that, overlap. Let's start. So, you know who I am. What's artificial intelligence? Everybody here knows what's artificial intelligence. There's a lot of definition. Let's go. I had thought of talking about the history of AI. It started, the precursors of AI are like the automatons and the myth in prehistory. Like, it started a very long time ago. This is not something new. Humans have always thought about automating processes in their lives. Ever since we were in the Stone Age, they were trying to make things simpler or easier for them. And this moved like very slowly until the 50s, where Turing started doing the Turing test. We started getting game AI. We had the Dartmouth conference and so on. Then we had the golden years of AI, then the downturn, then a boom, then a downturn again, and then the modern milestones. And that was like Deep Blue from IBM in 97, DARPA, the Grand Challenge in 95, and so on. I'm going to relate to you first, before I continue, my personal experience with AI. In 1985, this is exactly the computer I had at home. It's an Apple IIe. I used to play a game, a car racing game with my brother, and he always beat me. He's not here. Some of you know my brother, but he's not here today. So I went into the code, and I was able to hack an autopilot on the code and add a button to start it and stop it, so he wouldn't know. And when we were playing on the same keyboard, I would just touch the A button, and it would go into autopilot, and I would beat him, like really beat him. And he would like go crazy at me. But anyway, yeah, that's where it started. A year later, I wrote a small piece of code in BASIC. Remember BASIC programming language? And I made it answer specific questions in English. And I was so happy with myself. Like I was 15, 16, and I was experimenting. And then in 1992 at AUB, we took an artificial intelligence course where we developed a thematic natural language processing system using Lisp. And that was a great achievement for us at that point. I mean, we were so impressed with the course, with the material, and that got us thinking. So, yeah. Currently, there's a lot of stuff going on with AI, big data, GPU-accelerated learning and machine learning, deep learning. Yeah. Yes. You want to fix this?
It doesn't, yes.
It looks odd, yeah. I couldn't.
It's
much better now?
Yes.
How do you like it now? Okay. Okay, so digital assistance, cognitive computing. I put a question mark next to cognitive computing because where are we with cognitive computing? Is it progressing, or is it just hype? We had IBM Watson, we had a lot of stuff going on. What's at the core of this, and is it really working? Alibaba language system outscored top humans in reading and comprehension tests. We have inference, we have robotics, we have neuromorphic and quantum processors coming out, and we have the ethical debate about the future of AI. Is it legal? Is it ethical? Is it a combination of both? Should we do it? What does it do? Real-life cases, I'm going to skip them because Mr. Zarut went over these, but basically, it's doing a great job in healthcare. It's doing a great job in transportation. It's doing a great job in creating assistants that can help us. So eventually, we will be able to ask our assistant to do stuff for us. So it will simplify our life somehow. And this is an example of what I'm actually doing personally with AI. We're applying machine learning in construction to optimize construction processes. We're able to predict the performance of equipment on site ahead of time so we can better estimate and budget our construction projects using existing data that we collect using IoT devices. And this has been a great achievement. We're actually collaborating right now with Google on creating a user case study for Google on the work done here. And I actually presented about this at the O'Reilly conference like a couple of weeks ago. So this is something new. We're the first probably to apply this in construction. Going back to what's happening right now in artificial intelligence, we all know Moore's law and the death of silicon. And it was the case that like every 2 years we could double what's on a chip until recently. And now we started looking at different types of technologies, alternative technologies, chemical, DNA, liquid, photonic, neuromorphic, and quantum computing. And I'm going to discuss very quickly neuromorphic and quantum computing. Neuromorphic processors, I'm going to read this because I like it. Analog, digital, mixed mode, analog, and software systems that implement models of neural systems. That's a mouthful of words. Basically, it will help eventually it will help revolutionize AI. Why? Because it works in a fashion similar to how the brain works. It's neurons and synapses. It builds the relationships between the neurons on the fly as it learns from data. And this is still in research, of course, but if neuromorphic processors become a reality and they're commercialized, they will change the way computers learn and artificial intelligence progresses. Right now, the best example is from Intel. They have 130,000 artificial neurons in a CPU compared to billions of neurons in the human brain. Quantum computing. We've all heard of quantum computing. Some people think quantum computing is going to change the world. It's going to make cryptography obsolete. What I think is it's going to change the way artificial intelligence develops and progresses, the way computers learn and are able to tackle big problems, they're able to do machine learning or something even more advanced very quickly. Currently, we're still in the research phase of quantum computing. Intel, IBM, and Google all have research versions of quantum processors. They're looking at 49 qubits, 50 qubits, 72 qubits. Some people say that we'll need at least 1 million qubits per processor to take a processor commercially. This is still to be seen. I mean, this is still in a very nascent phase of it. But, so, neuromorphic processors, quantum computing, how will these impact us? I mean, the basic idea behind what we do as people is we don't care about the technology providing the service or the function. We want to see how will this impact us. How will I use it? How will I use my Google Assistant? If I take my phone and say, OK, Google, remind me to X, X, Y, Z, whatever. I don't care how Google is doing it. I don't care that it's connecting over the internet, going to a back-end server, doing this and coming back. I want to use it. So how will AI change the way we work? Some ideas are, like, some roles will be transformed by AI, yes. We'll have fully autonomous processes, better time and resource management, higher efficiency and precision at reduced overall costs, algorithmic content customization. I mean, these are all high-level ideas of what can be done. But what are some of the actual predictions for AI? Like Elon Musk, I go to Elon Musk. He mentioned once, humans must merge with machines or become irrelevant in the AI age. I don't know how true that is. I mean, he said it, not I, but like this is up for debate. But I'm going to mention a few other points, and I would love to see some feedback from everyone here on what do you think. Computers will solve all problems known to the human race. Do you think that's going to happen? A raise of hands, yes, no, whatever. Okay, okay. Machines will become our best friends, our advisors, our caretakers. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Possibly, yeah. We could accurately predict future events. I hope so. We will all become cyborgs. I hope not. Yeah. We will become superhumans living in symbiosis with AI. And this is, I think, related to the levels of maturity of AI. I mean, AI, like we think of it right now, it's going to automate processes and replace the workforce. But I think from the workforce perspective and jobs perspective, we're going to have levels of maturity of AI impacting jobs. Initially, it will be an automation process where it makes repetitive jobs easier and replaces the human doing it. But eventually, it will be an augmentation process where it augments our reality. We'll have augmented reality, we'll have augmented intelligence. I think the final level of maturity, as far as can be seen, is amplification of the process we can do. Like, it will automate, it will augment, then it will amplify. These are the levels I think we're going to hit. Will we be able to upload our minds to the cloud and reach immortality? I hope not. Okay, humans do not have to work anymore. Sign me up. Will we have to rethink the value and purpose of the human mind and body? That's very philosophical. But I think philosophy is going to be one of the major fields involved in artificial intelligence throughout. Singularity. You mentioned singularity at the beginning. Singularity is, I'm going to read the definition because it's very important. And this is a very big debate right now. Technological singularity is the idea that technological progress, particularly in artificial intelligence, will reach a tipping point to where machines are exponentially smarter than humans. It's basically saying that those machines will become sentient, conscious machines that are able to experience life like humans do, not necessarily in the same way. We are organic machines. They are silicon-based machines for now. Is this going to happen or not? Are we going to have an artificial general intelligence? And I'm not saying artificial intelligence. It's an artificial general intelligence. It's a wide-scope, artificially intelligent entity that's able to think and create on its own. Kurzweil says that by 2029, we'll have machines that will match human intelligence. By 2045, we'll have singularity. Elon Musk, Stephen Hawking, recent Stephen Hawking, Steve Wozniak, and so on, have all warned against AI singularity. And some critics assert that no computer or machine will ever achieve human intelligence. But what is human intelligence? What is, if we want to mimic human intelligence, human consciousness, what is AI consciousness? There are 3 different perspectives on this that I brought in here today. I'm going to read them, and I'm going to ask everyone to vote on this with me so I can get a feeling. One answer is, AI consciousness is a byproduct that spontaneously emerges from any information processing system that crosses some threshold of complexity. So okay, 1 vote. How many votes that say number 1? Okay, a few hands, nice. It's specific to biology. So this is a biological process, humans are created this way. There are neurons, there are synapses, and this is our capability. Who says it's biology? Okay, much less. Who says it's not physical at all? It's spiritual, it's godly, it's divine. Who knows, though? How can we tell? So basically, there are a couple of examples I want to give today about consciousness of a computer. One of them is the Chinese room, and one of them is the fire truck example. The Chinese room, basically, I'm going to describe it, then I'm going to run a video that demonstrates it. The Chinese room is, they bring somebody who does not speak Chinese at all, put them in a room. It's full of Chinese books and papers, and it has a set of instructions that matches symbols to each other. And they close the door, and they pass questions in Chinese under the door to the person inside who cannot read Chinese. This person takes the question, looks at the symbols, takes a book of instructions, matches symbol 1 to an answer symbol, symbol 2 to an answer symbol, and so on, then writes all those on a piece of paper, passes it out under the door. The person outside gets a perfect answer in Chinese. So the person outside thinks that whoever is inside is capable of understanding Chinese and responding in Chinese. And they repeat this on and on and on. The question is the person inside conscious of what Chinese is and is able to understand Chinese, or are they just applying an algorithm, returning answers through a set of instructions? This is the way to think, I think, this is the way to think about consciousness of the machines. Machines right now, machine learning, artificial intelligence, whatever you want to call it, it's the capability of a machine to process instructions, algorithms, and come back with answers. Is it conscious? Does it understand? When AlphaGo plays Go, does it understand the game? When Deep Blue won chess, does it understand what chess is? No, it's just processing algorithms. I'm going to let me play the video. It's funny. It's just a 60-second video.
60-second adventures in thought. Number 3, the Chinese room. Can a machine ever be truly called intelligent? American philosopher and Rhodes scholar John Searle certainly can. In 1980, he proposed the Chinese room thought experiment in order to challenge the concept of strong artificial intelligence, and not because of some 80s design fad. He imagines himself in a room with boxes of Chinese characters he can't understand, and a book of instructions which he can. If a Chinese speaker outside the room passes him messages under the door, Searle can follow instructions from the book to select an appropriate response. The person on the other side would think they're chatting with a Chinese speaker, just one who doesn't get out much. But really, it's a confused philosopher. Now, according to Alan Turing, the father of computer science, if a computer program can convince a human they're communicating with another human, then it could be said to think. The Chinese room suggests that however well you program a computer, it doesn't understand Chinese, it only simulates that knowledge, which isn't really intelligence. But then sometimes humans aren't that intelligent either.
Going back, I hope you liked it. I thought it was a bit funny, and it explains what the Chinese room is. So basically, the idea behind the Chinese room is that computers, are they conscious or not? We have to think about their capability of experiencing the world like we experienced it. One more thing about the Singularity event, AI consciousness is, I'm going to take the fire truck example. When we want to train a computer to recognize a fire truck, the image of a fire truck, we take 1 million pictures of a fire truck from every different angle, behind a tree, underwater, wherever. We put them in a computer, we run some deep learning algorithm, and we train the computer to understand what a fire truck is. We try not to overfit, we try to minimize errors. We try to make it as close to as possible to as accurate as possible. And then we show it an image of a fire truck behind 2 trees instead of 1 tree, and it gets lost. It cannot understand this is a fire truck. Similar to the stop sign. If you put a couple of whatever, stickers on a stop sign, it's not a stop sign anymore for a computer. But if you give a toy fire truck to a 2-year-old kid, tell them this is a fire truck, they look at it, up, down, left, right, they play with it for a minute, then they toss it away, they walk down the street, and every single time they see a fire truck, from no matter what angle, from behind, from the front, behind the tree, with the siren on, without the siren on, yellow, red, whatever, they will be able to recognize this is a fire truck, and they will tell you it's a fire truck. This one-shot learning, or transfer learning, is what is missing right now in machines for them to become not sentient, but capable of understanding or learning very quickly. We're still in the machine learning phase where we have to train using very large data. We need to approach a position where we use very small data or one-shot learning for machines to really become human-like or mimic human behavior. My last slide is this. What will the future look like? Utopia or dystopia? Will we have this Zen city, or will we have the Terminator-like life? I don't know. This is a question that we cannot answer, I think, right now, but we'll try to live with it, as you said. It's coming, it's happening. We have to deal with it the best way we can. Thank you.
I want to start by thanking the association leadership for the invitation. And I want to thank the New York office for handling all the logistics. They initially invited the wrong Hajj faculty member, but then they corrected that. But then they couldn't go back on the invitation, so that's why you see there's 2 Hajj in the same department. That's a mistake that the president also commonly makes, that he mixes between us. So all the criticism that comes to the administration, it's from that Hajj, not I wanted to change a bit the discussion and broaden it a bit beyond AI. I think AI is getting a lot of the credit and the blame, but it's a bit bigger than just AI. And that's why I brought in the term Fourth Industrial Revolution, which the first time I've heard it was from Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum. I'm not sure if he's originated the term or not. And you see in my title here, Fourth Industrial Revolution, and having an emoji thumbs up and a thumbs down. This is my attempt of being hip and cool. And so you see that the faculty members are still not cool at AUB, but I'm trying. What would this Fourth Industrial Revolution look like? Every time I give this presentation, I add a P to it. And I'm at 5 now, so 5 Ps. How would the world of the technology look like? I think these Ps it's going to be preventive. Technology will prevent a lot of things from occurring, hopefully bad things. It would be predictive. It would know what you need before you need it. It would be very personalized, very customized to your needs. It'd be perpetual, ever ongoing. And the newest one that I added is pervasive. It'll be everywhere. But this is not magic, because sometimes when we talk about AI, the sense that we get, it's like we're talking about something magical. It's not. It's just math and science. And it's just being operational, made operational by engineering, and just so Abby doesn't get upset, and computer scientists, obviously. And this is something that is really very important. And Roy, you showed the history. The history of all this discussion dates back to the 40s. And if we go to the origin of the math that created the AI, goes even before that. And the question is why? But what is important for us today is the many questions that these advancements bring in. So when we have these 5 Ps in our life, when technology is everywhere all the time, there are a lot of ethical concerns, issues on jobs, good or bad, role of government, academia, private sector. And the answer to these questions, and because I only have a short time, 10 minutes, I'll give you the short version of the answer, and it is that we do not know. You won't hear a faculty member at AUB saying that too often, so I'll let you enjoy that for a second. But let me tell you why. Why is it that we do not know? Why is it that most of the presentations today were just actually questions without a lot of the answers? And I believe it's due to three things, and Abby touched on a couple of these at the start of the morning. It is the rate, the convergence, and the scope. What do we mean by that? If we look at all the indicators of technology progress, from the issue of the growth in processing, to memory, to data, to growth in DNA sequencing data, to the cost, all indicators show an exponential growth. And this is very important. There's the issue of convergence. So it's not only about AI, the future of combination. A lot of the examples that were given till now, they're actually more about robotics, Internet of Things, augmented reality, nanotechnology, 3D manufacturing, biotechnology, mobile and 5G. Think about all these technologies. Think about AI if you do not have a mobile phone. Think about AI if you do not have an internet connection. So all of this progress that we've seen in the last decade or two has been exponentially contributing to this revolution. And that's why the terminology that this is the fourth industrial revolution. So we're comparing this to the digital revolution, comparing this to the steam engine, and obviously the electrical contribution to the revolution. And this is the fourth. And the special thing about it is that this rate and this convergence and the scope, it targets and touches on many aspects of our lives and many questions that revolve in cultural questions, economic, social, ethical, legal, and beyond. And to give you an idea about the difference between this, the three largest companies in Detroit, 1990, we don't care a lot about dollars at AUB, but just to put this into numbers. Market capital, 36 billion. Revenue, 250 billion. 1.2 million employees. Contrast that to Silicon Valley, 2014, three largest companies. Market capital, almost 1 trillion. Revenues, about the same, like back in 1990, but the number of employees, 137,000. Okay? About a tenth of a difference there. So just think about that difference, that scale that we've mentioned. When it comes to AI specifically at AUB, Dr. Hazem, when he sent the email to the faculty asking who does AI, I was expecting, honestly, a few replies, mostly from engineering and computer science. And I was surprised because in addition to what you've seen in his presentation, this is the remainder of the list and the three additional areas that we see work in them, in social media, in commerce, and in medical. We've received many, many replies and across almost all the faculties. And that tells you the scale of interest that we are having in academia around AI. When it comes to the work that I'm involved in, I'm part of two research groups at AUB, the Vision and Robotics Lab and the Networking and Security, and that's why you see the work being done in these seemingly two unrelated areas. But 30 minutes? Okay, thank you, great. What you said? So I come from a background of teleoperation, remote control of robots over the internet. Back in, I'm not going to tell you when, so you won't guess my age. But so I got into these two areas. You know, how do we deal with networks and how do we deal with robots? How do we get them to work together? And that's where we're applying a lot of the AI. And I'll focus here on the most recent projects that we've done. The first one is related to IoT. And this is a project that is funded by TELUS. Those of you that are locals, they know TELUS is one of the largest operators in Canada. And they've been funding our research in this area for several years. So this project is about IoT, and can we, through the network, understand the traffic without reading the traffic? So if the traffic that is coming from devices is encrypted, can we, from the patterns of the traffic, understand who sent that traffic? What type of a device sent that traffic? What type of traffic it is? Because that would have implication on how we treat the traffic. So do we slow it down? Do we speed it up? Do we give it preferential treatment or not? And also would allow us to try to understand if ever an IoT network, for example, cameras, and this had happened historically, cameras that are connected to the network, if they're hacked and being used to carry out global attacks, can we understand that that camera is actually being hacked? And this is what we're working on, so we can have an AI engine that is sitting at the network and just looking at the traffic and creating an image of the traffic. So instead of analyzing the bits, actually creating an image. You can see one example. So this is your traffic on the network, lower left corner. And try to have AI using that image predict what type of traffic that is. And we're doing that pretty good accuracy, even if your traffic is encrypted. The other project that we're working on is a medical field. We have several projects with the medical school at AUB, and this is one of them. And the idea here is, can we have an AI do screening better than a doctor would do, primarily when it comes to cardiac care? So if you come to emergency room and you say, I have chest pain, and I think I'm having a heart attack, there is a protocol now, and there are scores that the doctors will compute to make a decision of which route of treatment and screening that they will follow. Do they send you to actually do stress imaging tests or not? And we know historically that there's a lot of false negatives. So if most people that do a stress test turn out to be healthy and they did not need it in the first place. And this is a concern, because now you're burdening the system and there are financial implications to it. And this is a non-invasive procedure. There are other procedures through the screening process. If you went to a cath lab, in many cases also you did not need to go to do a catheter. And in that case, again, there are risks associated with this. So can we have an AI understand better your case and try to screen you better? And what I'm showing here are different AI engines that will allow you to choose the one depending on your financial capabilities. As a country, as an insurance, or as a hospital, you could say, you know what, I want high accuracy and I do not care, I'm willing to pay a lot of money. Then in that case, just send everybody, screen everybody. Or you might say, well, we don't have a lot of budget this year. So you know what, give me 60% of the people, but give me the people with the highest risk and how accurate that system could be. So effectively, AI is allowing us to peg the risk of missing an obstructive CAD, okay, an artery, a disease in your heart versus $1. Could be a bad thing, could be a good thing, depending who's using it and who's tuning that parameter. This is another one of my favorite, and this is from the robotics field. What you'll see here in this video in our drones lab is somebody driving the drone, not anything unusual. But what's unusual is actually that there's an AI engine taking the commands of the driver and translating them better and trying to understand better what that person's intentions are. And if you've ever flown a drone, you know that is actually very difficult and very challenging. And here, so what we're trying to do is have an AI not replace humans, not perform better than humans, but have AI understand the humans better and let the systems perform better because of that understanding. So I'll show you this video. In this particular case, the user is using a haptic, we call them haptic devices. These are force feedback joysticks that allows them to feel forces on their hands as they're driving it. And they're conducting these maneuvers. And we've shown through research that we could outperform using this system somebody driving the drones with a joystick, or somebody driving the drone without our system being enabled on almost all parameters: the distance traveled, the number of accidents, and the time of completion. So some of the questions that were posed for us is, the ethical and beyond ethical considerations. And I think it's not only an issue of privacy here, because one of the main things that comes up is privacy. And I think that we killed that long ago. Once we've went into digitization and digital world, we're done with our privacy. And this is something that for the most part, we have to accept. And I think, how many of you have Facebook? Okay. How many of you still have Facebook? Okay. So you see what I mean, right? You understand that your data is being used. You understand that it's a very private data, but it's a cost that you're willing to take because it's very important to post the picture of what you ate last night. It's human nature. Okay? So this is a cost that we are actually willing to pay. And if we think about this in any platform that we're using, it's not an AI thing. AI is just getting a bad rep about it. But we've been doing this. We've digitized. We had this issue before. Our data has been stolen before AI came up and before this big hype of AI. And it will be stolen even if AI does not progress beyond what it is today. This is just the nature of the digital world. The issue of liability and the issue of the vehicles, by the way, and this example that you gave about the decision, do we hit the 5, do we hit the 3, do we hit the 2? This is not a new ethical dilemma. This is the runaway cart dilemma. This is historically always been there. It's not that AI brought it up, but now we're a bit more thinking about it because of the scale of deployment that we're having. The issue of life and death, and this is something that I also want to bring up and mention, because one of the big concerns that we're having with AI and robotics in general and these technologies is the weaponization. Okay? And this is a reality whether we like it or not. And believe it or not, even in the region in Lebanon, we get reached out to by militaries for us to develop automated weapons, okay? Even at AUB. So this is a big question here, and this is a big ethical dilemma. There's a bit of work being done at the UN towards trying to have a non-proliferation agreement on the issue of AI and weaponizing AI. You know, we know how nuclear deals went, and so good luck with that. I don't have a lot of hope for it. I think it should still be done, but I'm not sure the enforcement of that. There's the issue of bias. It was mentioned with the classification. This is a big problem. We have to realize that up-to-date AI is data-driven. AI, in most part, learns from data, either data that it generates or data that it is fed. And the question is, what is the quality of decision is based on that quality of that data that comes in. And this is a big problem. Copyright. There was the issue of the example that was given with the music. Or art, we've seen art being, paintings being drawn by AI. Who owns the copyright of that product? And the economic gap, and this is a big concern and something for us in the region to worry about, is that this technology, although it is reducing the barrier to entry in many of the markets and many of the sectors of technology, but there's a risk that if we don't do the right thing at the right time and we act quickly, we might miss that window and opportunity yet again, as we've done in most of the previous industrial revolutions, and we will economically be left behind. And this is something to think about. And as I mentioned, all of these are really not completely new, and these are something that we faced in most of the previous industrial revolutions that we went through. So what can we do as academic institutions? I think we need to change. We need to change the way we do things. We need to change how we educate and what education means. But the concern there is that that would require a lot of overhead. And that will take a lot of courage and a lot of effort. And honestly, I'm not sure if many organizations are willing to do that until they feel the impact, and economically the impact, which means the enrollment gets touched. Okay? Until that point, I'm not sure that we would change much. We need to get involved in private-public sector involvement, and because this is a partnership really, and we have to take our role in it. And I think AUB is getting better at doing that. We have to educate, and this is at the core of what we do, and this is an obvious one. And we really have to commit. We have to commit that we would not be involved, whatever the return is, in any unethical type of research. And unfortunately, we've seen that this is not the case for all the universities in the world. There are examples of big centers and big partnerships that are being built for AI and for robotics between weapon manufacturers and big universities, very reputable universities. And we know even Google. Google's motto is do no evil. But we know with the Maven project, even a lot of the employees are not happy with the Maven project with the government. So there's a lot of questions here, and there's something that we have to commit at the faculty level and at the leadership level. So I think we're faced with two options. We either grow up and step up to the challenge and get on that surfboard and ride the wave and benefit from it and takes us further, or we're going to simply drown. To end on a positive note of drowning, this work that I've displayed is the most recent work of many of the students and alumni that I mentioned here, and in collaboration with many faculty members. And again, I want to thank TELUS and all the funding organizations that have helped support our research. Thank you.
Thank you for all the presentations. It's been very interesting. I've been jotting down notes furiously. So I have a lot of questions, but I think if Elena has collected some note cards, if you've had a chance to write down some cards, write down some questions on the cards, like we can start with that. What was interesting was, Imad, you mentioned at the end about Google, the Don't Be Evil motto. The latest shareholder letter from Alphabet, the parent company of Google, they've actually removed Don't Be Evil from their manifesto. So make what...
At least they're honest.
At least, well, I don't know. So yeah, we have that. What was interesting was that, I'm going to pick off from where you left, and then we'll integrate the questions as they come in. You said, once economic impact starts to or take place, or enrollment starts to get affected, maybe universities will start paying attention. But in your roles, have you already started to see? Thank you. Have you already started to see people changing the way they're educating the youth, especially when it comes to the future of work? Because labor itself, thank you, labor itself is going to evolve, and it might be. I think I forget who mentioned it. One of you mentioned it to me, that the definition of literacy itself will be, yeah, Sam mentioned that, and the definition of literacy will be, can you work with an AI system? Not just being able to read or write. And so I don't know if maybe we'll just do a quick poll with the panelists. If you've seen the way educational discourse is happening, has that changed?
No.
No? Anybody else feel differently?
No, I mean, we have new modalities of presentations, and we know with the online courses, but whether the big players in academia are changing the way they're teaching at scale, we've not. Because again, this requires a lot of overhead. This requires a lot of time from us to rethink, and it requires a cultural change. From the 3-credit model, I have my slides, I've developed them over 10 years, and I walk in and I just flip through them, versus you now coming and telling me that I have to teach robotics or AI with all these perspectives in mind. And we've had some shy experiences with this. We have a course between the Maroon Samaan Faculty of Engineering and Architecture and Faculty of Health Sciences on humanitarian engineering, where we bring students, and this is, by the way, in partnership with Johns Hopkins University and Boston University. And we bring students from all kinds of backgrounds, and we give them a 6-week intensive course, including visits to refugee camps for problem identification. And they come back to the lab, and they work on solutions and interventions, and they prototype them. And it's a very successful program, very highly rated. We have last time we offered it in the summer, we got 10 students from Boston University. But there are 19 faculty members that are involved in teaching this course. It's a course, it's humanitarian engineering. So it's one course, 3 credits, 19 faculty members. We're yet to figure out how to compensate them. They're all just volunteering their time, including us, the organizers. We've done it 3 times, and we're probably reaching our limit of volunteerism. That we probably will not do it more than one more time.
I mean, like, when we hire software engineers or people for our work, we find that they're lacking some of the skills that are required for current advances in technology. We're having to either teach them or train them on the job in machine learning, in coding, in whatever. And I found that recently there's this trend of that's popping up, which is advanced coding camps, like boot camps for coding. Postgraduates go into this for 10 to 12 weeks. They get modules of software development and artificial intelligence in whatever field you want to put them in. And what's going on is that universities have not caught up with current requirements on the job market. Mm-hmm. So a person graduating with a computer science degree or a CCE degree, a computer engineering degree, they have an amazing background, they have excellent exposure, but they're not ready for the market. I'm part of we're founding our own boot camp for coding. We're trying to give STEM graduates, recent STEM graduates, a chance to find jobs by running them through a coding boot camp that has specific modules of coding and of technology and software engineering and program management, quality management, that they don't take in university as part of their courses. I think this is something that needs to be addressed in terms of curriculum and in terms of the structure of the courses, the 3-credit course, as you said. I think this is changing. If you look at how online courses are being given right now, like you go on Udemy or whatever, you can get micro courses on specific technologies or specific ideas you want. This could be something to look into in academia, where course structures change and also course content. I mean, universities are lagging in their action towards keeping up with requirements.
Actually, I want to, Ahmad said we're not doing educationally different for AI? I'm not sure if this is what you said, but I think we are. I think we are doing a lot. I think, to me, actually, this goes back to, even what Ahmad said, the exponential, the fast movement of AI. If you actually look at what's going on at AUB, I can talk, from a personal experience. The course, I joined AUB in 2008. I used to do data mining at Intel. I started with a course that actually people didn't know what the heck that course was. Now, actually, it's a movement. I mean, there's actually a movement from the bottom up. I mean, that the students are actually coming after AI. The students are after learning machine learning. The courses have been evolving. The technology have been changing. I mean, we're talking about these music composition, all this stuff. So I think education, has been trying to keep up also. But I don't think, we've done enough. Maybe that I give it. I think also the one thing I do want to mention, that I'm not sure people have been noticing this, but I've noticed it with my kids. Again, I use my 13-year-old as an example. In the summer, he came to me. He says, "Dad, are you willing to pay $12 for me to take ethical hacking?" I mean, this is a course on Udemy that actually college engineering students take, right? So he's a 13-year-old, and I said, "Sure. I mean, I'll pay you $100 if you go study it." So, anyways, he signed up. He bought himself a USB. He plugged it into his mom's computer without her recognizing this. He pulled it away when mom was actually working on her PC. He shut it down for her. He took pictures from her when she was doing. And, this is what I'm saying. Education now is not just in the hands of educators. Education is out there, and I think, people are grabbing it, and we have to recognize that, and we should not limit people with that. And this is happening actually in high schools and middle schools, and not, just in college. So, but the question, are we doing enough? On the ethical side and all this stuff, I definitely don't think we're doing enough. I think there's also an effort. One of our colleagues, Dr. Ali Al-Haj, who, he's who covers aspects of software engineering, he's thinking and talking too much, or not too much, but talking often and frequently actually about the impacts of AI and ethics. But we're not doing enough. I think there's a lot to be done in this space.
I'm not in academia, but I've had the opportunity to mentor a couple of students who are about to embark on their career. And I think we should do more mentoring to students to follow careers where AI will have the highest impact, because that will be, don't go and study taxi driving now, for example. Just an exaggeration. But there are doctors who can work with a remote operation robot that's doing a remote operation. This is a unique skill that is going to become more and more prevalent in the future. So focus on areas from a career perspective during university and post-university on those areas that will benefit the most from AI.
Yeah, and I think, as we're bringing up some very interesting points on education and different modalities of education, some of the questions coming in from the audience, and I've tried to collate them the best I can. What's interesting is this issue of, I guess, quote unquote, teaching machines ethics, or I guess an indirect translation of that would be, how do you teach computer science students, how do you embody in them those values so that when they're working on these systems, they impart, if that's the right word, into the machines, or program those into the machine, so that these systems can follow some of the values and norms that different societies have. And again, I guess I'll add a bit of nuance to it, that values and norms are different in different parts of the world, so we can't maybe build a Western normative system that applies across the world. And so maybe, if you guys have thoughts on that, and I guess maybe I'll add, just to, make it even more complicated. Somebody asked, how are AI ethics issues different from human ethics issues? So if you want to tackle that first, or start with the other one first, I'm going to leave that to you. Yeah.
It's interesting because we talk about AI ethics as if our society is perfect and is ethical, and that we've not had ethical issues in any other aspect, and it's just a question of, you know, whether the AI system will be ethical, whatever our standards are. To me, it's not a big problem. It's the people that are operating it. I mean, now you have policies on what they call collateral damage in a war, right? Depending on the value of a target, we decide whether we kill the civilians or not, because it's too important of a target, and there's algorithms to make that decision. Whether that's a human doing it or whether it's a software that is not AI, because remember, not everything is AI, and a lot of maybe the examples sometimes we're giving are not technically AI in the academic sense, they're just rule-based. If this, then that, if this, then that, if this, then that. So if you see 3 people and an important target, then shoot. If you see 4, don't shoot. That's not AI. What's the ethical decision-making on that? So even with all the attempts that we're trying to have, I mentioned the United Nations, I mentioned also IEEE is the biggest technical organization in our field. They have ethically aligned standards. They're working on ethically aligned standards. There's a big effort to come up with ethically aligned designs, I should mention. It's not only AI. And this is a bigger question than just AI. And I don't think we have a good answer for it.
I think the President, you have a question? Yeah.
Just
a comment.
A comment, because I think you referred to it, each of you, a little bit elliptically, some more directly, which is what's the role of the university. You know, the role of university, and I hope this comment isn't taken negatively, you know, very few people are brave. Brave is this small area between foolish and careful. And it's really easy to stride into the other areas. And universities are not brave, nor are faculty members generally brave, in my experience. This week is a celebration of the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize could have been called the Brave Prize. They're typically brave scientists, in particular the people who won the Peace Prize. For me, this was one of the most impressive years. You know, a woman who was raped as a Yazidi refugee and has fought against that her whole life, and a gynecologist who developed ways to repair the damage from extreme weaponization of sexual assault, and then was threatened, then came back to his country. And the scientists this year are brave. They did things that others. So if you think about how rare that is, how rare really brave science or humanity is, and this is not a criticism of faculty of universities, you go to society, and society tends to want someone to make the decision easier, and you alluded to that. Perhaps the most haunting film I ever saw was Sophie's Choice. How many people have seen that movie? So it's a movie where a mother has to make a choice between her 2 children. Who's going to go to a Nazi death camp and who's going to survive? Not surprisingly, she picks the boy. Universities will eventually have to bring in AI. I hope that we bring it in as part of the educational system and not as a crutch to make decisions. And Imad alluded to this. Who gets hit? Do we run 3 people or 4 people? Because that's human beings' comfort zone, right? That's cautious. Others make the decision. Algorithms make the decision. Or foolish. I may as well wipe out everyone. Why not? I hope that this will make it less rare for people to have really brave ideas in science or society. And I think that if we don't incorporate it sooner rather than later for all its risks, we will take the route of the dinosaur.
I attended a conference last year in California about autonomous driving. And the presenter gave us a new flavor of the trolley problem. He said, you are in your level 5 self-driving car. Level 5 means there is no steering wheel. You're on the highway going full speed, and the truck in front of you has a problem. Your car does not have enough space to stop. It can swerve left and hit a guy on a motorcycle. He does not have a helmet. Or it can turn right and hit a different guy on a different motorcycle. He has a helmet. Or it can go straight and hit the truck. Show of hands, how many people think we should go left? Most of us raised our hand. Yeah, it's his problem. He doesn't have a helmet. Some people said, no, turn right. Maybe that guy with the helmet will survive. Nobody said go straight, because you'll die. And then he looked at us and he laughed. He said, "You are all wrong. There's a fourth possibility I didn't tell you about. The AI engine in the car and the AI engine at the insurance company have been talking all along. And together they will decide which way the car will go." So what we are facing with AI is that it is no longer an engineering question or a legal question or a medical question. It is cross-functional that touches many, many subjects. And we haven't, I think, developed yet the framework to think about those and making those decisions. And each of these industries is thinking about those same problems in a separate way. But eventually, these groups have to come together and develop what is ethical and not ethical for society. It's not only engineering or medical or legal and so on.
I just want to share a little story, and then I'll try to answer the questions. We had a panel similar, not exactly similar to this, but on AI and data at AUB last year. And, you know, it was an open, it's actually organized by the Center of Teaching and Learning, an active center at AUB. And so we talked, and I was talking about the drones that could fly around and identify people who they are. And then after the discussion, one guy I didn't recognize, you know, a person comes to me and says, "I'd like to have a discussion with you." And I say, "Yeah, sure." He says, "So the drones, how much can they weigh? How much can they carry?" And I say, "Well, I mean, the ones we flew can carry about, you know, half a kilo to a kilo." He said, "Can they carry a bomb?" And I say, "Well, I mean, it depends on the drone. There's already drones that carry bombs, if you know. I mean, so this is not just the..." And, you know, I don't want to continue the discussion, but this is a Lebanese guy in Lebanon, and, you know, he's asking me these questions, and I don't know where he's going with this. But, you know, it's that thing immediately. I mean, you know, we come up with the technology, and people, you know, some people at least, you know, the evil side. So I think this takes me to the questions, you know, how can we, you know, as educator, as AUB, as, you know, what can we do with AI ethics? I want to use an example of how. Dean Alan Shhadi, who's currently the Dean of the Faculty of Maroon Zaman, Faculty of Engineering and Architecture, about 2 years ago when he took helm of, you know, the faculty, he started talking a lot about, you know, humanity, and we have to, you know, and, you know, some of us, including myself, are looking at him, you know, I just care where I get my funding from, you know. That's just what I was thinking, you know, just give me the money, I'll just do the project, right? But after, you know, talking and, you know, now, I mean, just looking at it a couple years later, he actually has made a difference. I mean, now I truly think about this. I mean, the point that Ahmad mentioned, you know, I wouldn't go seek, you know, a project to develop you know, a bomb or something like this. But if somebody came along and said, you know, can you make it faster, you know, and, you know, it could be a company that, you know, manufactures bomb, I would have gone and done it, because I'm not thinking about the bomb. I'm just thinking about my project, you know, a cool project and stuff. You know, Cambridge Analytica, you know, I do project, you know, my work actually before that discussion for the last 4 or 5 years has been on developing these opinion mining system that can do like Cambridge Analytica for the Arab world. And so we can, you know, manipulate the masses and make them, you know, decide what we want them to decide. So I think the simple example of actually, you know, few people in the right places, you know, educating, you know, the faculty, and then the faculty trickling down to the students, and then having think about every project we work on, you know, what's the impact to humanity? What does it do to humanity? Makes a lot of difference. And so I think we have to do this actually to our students, even though we may not have a class. We also have to have our, you know, courses and stuff to do this. But we have to think about, you know, humanity, and then see actually things like humanitarian engineering and all this stuff. The other question actually, AI ethics versus human ethics. I think there's a difference. I mean, there's human ethics actually in, you know, maybe it goes back to the conscious question. I don't know who was talking about it, maybe Roy. But when we make decisions, we're conscious of what we're making, the impact of what we're making. When we talk about AI ethics, there's several aspects. We talked about security. Who's accessing my email? Is it known to everybody? This is not a human ethics question. This is an AI ethics question. The job safety, right? When AI takes over, the industrial revolution, between 18 and 22, the World Economic Forum is saying we have to make major changes. We have to hire skilled people, and those who don't know may have to be fired or retrained. This is an AI ethical question. Personal safety, when the car drives and it's making the decision. This is an AI ethical question. So, and I could keep on going. But the point I'm trying to say, actually, because of these are, I think, AI questions, not human ethics questions, we as researchers who, even like I said earlier, sometimes we don't understand sometimes why a certain algorithms makes a decision, a rational decision. I know the equation. I can explain exactly what's going on. But why? And sometimes if I do spend a little bit of time, I can find out why. And maybe this understanding why the AI is doing what it's doing is something that we also have to invest in. Maybe we need to be brave to actually, maybe go work on this project that may not have funding. And but definitely, as we think about the humane, we actually owe it to actually go help in figuring out the impact of this, so that us, our kids, all of us are at least aware of what these things are doing, and so we then have a chance to actually deciding, making or not making a decision. The Facebook example, Imad said, how many of you has Facebook? A lot of us raised our hand. How many still have, still a lot of, but after all this discussion, we made a conscious decision to actually stick with it, and that may be fine. But I think that, how many of you recognize how much data was being collected of you 2 years ago? I would think a lot of us did not, and so on and so forth. So I think we owe it to actually go and dig, reverse, this phenomenon of actually digging deeper into AI and saying, where does it have an impact? Maybe, every time a decision is going to be made that may impact you, we have algorithms that actually tells you, hey, watch out, this is what's going on. Do you want this or do you want that, right? And so on. So that's I think the difference between AI versus human and what we should do.
Yeah. I think we're still at a very early stage of developing ethics for AI. I think we're still discovering we're trying to discover what's needed to be developed. I think it's going to take multiple iterations of maturity for this to mature enough, to advance enough, for it to become solid enough to be applied commercially or in real life. Those decisions, ethical decisions that need to be made by a computer are not being made by the computer, they're being made by algorithms that we program, of course. So there has to be some kind of regulation in terms of protecting human rights, liberties, data protection, privacy protection, that gets incorporated into those algorithms. And I think these will develop over time. I don't think it's going to be a one-shot process where we figure them out in one night and we wake up in the morning and we go program them. This is going to happen over many years, many iterations, many trials and errors until we reach consensus on what is good for humans, what is good for people, what's bad for people. And we have to also think about jurisdictions and the nations. We live in different parts in the world. Different people in different parts of the world think differently about their privacy, about their liberties, about their rights, about what's human, what's not humane. We need to figure all that out and put it in algorithms eventually. We also need to think about keeping it free enough for researchers, for academicians, for the industry to develop new stuff and incorporate that new stuff into our lives. So I think it's a balance of regulation and like keeping it free, but also it's going to take some time and iterate. And it's also, there's like a philosophical aspect to this. It's not only a technical or a technological discussion. There's the philosophy of life, the philosophy of human rights. I mean, like, if we think about machines and ethics about machines, this is, I think, a fork here, but I want to mention this. What if machines become smart enough to help us? Like we have robots that go around in the house, like get me a beer from the fridge. This is a robot that's going to get me a beer from the fridge. Will this robot have robot rights? Like this is a philosophical question that's like being asked right now. There's a controversy about this. There's a discussion about this. People are asking, will those robots, if they become smart enough, have rights? Like similarly, many years ago, there were no animal rights, but animal rights developed over time. Human rights, in the old ages, there were no human rights. Human rights developed over time. Will we have to develop robot rights or artificial intelligence rights over time? This is a question.
Just not to beat a dead horse, just one quick comment. And you alluded to that, I think. There's also the ethics of not using AI. In other words, if autonomous driving is going to reduce accidents that are caused by humans by 90%, even if the AI engines do not produce the best results always, isn't that a good cause? Mm-hmm. So it's not only about whether we should use AI, it's whether we should not use AI. I think we should. I personally think we should. At least we should think about these things, using it versus not using it, before it is perfect, because perfect is the enemy of the good.
Yeah, that's very well said. So there was a quick question. I feel like that might have been directed towards me. Would you consider a collaboration between AUB and McGill in AI ethics research? Yes. Please come and find me, and would love to chat about that. So I'm going to mark that card as done. You mentioned an interesting point on how you need to think about some of the sort of unintended consequences of developing technologies that might be used for malicious purposes. I actually sit on the AI ethics review board at Microsoft, and I review about 3 to 4 projects, at least going through my department every week on the ethical implications. And we do try to do that, to the best of our abilities. And I think, that itself is a very helpful tool of having that triage happening before the project even has a single line of code written or architecture developed or anything. And I think that needs to be there needs to be a greater awareness for people to do that, both at corporations but also at universities where students who are doing their research work or development start to think about that. And I'm going to club 2 questions here that sort of build off of that. Someone citing Elon Musk and Dan Brown, the Origin book that Dan Brown published very recently. And it was around safety of fully autonomous systems. And so what can we do as researchers, as developers of these systems, to build in those fail-safes, to build in those control mechanisms? Can we borrow from existing theories? Do we need to do new research in that? And how do we make that an essential part of both education and development in the industry?
I am active in the Industrial Internet Consortium in Boston, and that is a very central question that we deal with on a daily basis. I wrote a paper recently about IoT trustworthiness. We call it trustworthiness. We are witnessing a convergence between two fields. One field is the IT field, which is focused on security and privacy. And the other field is operational technology, which is focused on safety, reliability, and resilience. And as these 2 environments converge, we have to make decisions. Do I delay the security patch on a server so that I don't disrupt operation, but at the same time, I'm introducing safety risks on the system? So how do you make that decision? And how do you make that decision in the right way over the full span of the life cycle of that system? It's a power plant, it's a machine that's going to last for 20, 30 years. So these are important questions. I mean, we're dealing with those questions on a daily basis, but safety trumps almost everything. because humans, when they get injured, when they die, it becomes a much more important concern than even privacy in some cases.
I definitely think I agree that there's a lot of effort going on into safety, and as number one. But I go back to that simple example. The system says so, and the manager in that apartment complex wasn't hesitant about saying the system says so without even understanding what the system is doing. And so Uber just last week, they bought a fleet of self-driving vehicles. And we tend to believe very easily what technology tells us, and we tend to follow. Again, the example of Facebook, it's it seems to be doing good things for us, so we just go use it. This self-driving vehicle is going to take us from point A to point B, so we get in it. This driving drone is being used in Dubai. We're going to get in it. It's exciting to start with, and then we start believing it. It's the AI race actually may trump this safety concerns, and people may be just racing. In companies in different places actually to adopt AI technologies because it saves money, and that's a driving influence. And we may be willing to actually not check everybody for their symptoms because it saves money. And so I don't know. I have mixed emotions about safety being given the importance it's given. And the other side of this question, actually, whether we learn from different places, I think there's opportunities. I mean, we do this within the technology and at the higher surface. I mean, the self-driving vehicles, is there a similarity between it and the flying navigation systems? The advances that happen within the technology, for example, vision happens to be seems to be always in the forefront, and so other AI technologies like natural language processing seems to adopt from that. So that is happening in some places, but anyways, that's my point on those two.
And concluding thoughts in 60 seconds each, maybe, as we're running out of time. Yeah.
I want to talk something about jobs, maybe, because we didn't discuss as much on the jobs aspect. But also a comment on the regulations and safety. I think there's a lot to learn from the aviation industry and from the medical field and from the finance sector, highly regulated fields. But I think it should stop there. We should be careful with regulation, not to extend it beyond where it should be. So there's a limit to that. On the jobs issue, I want to, because this is a big discussion and a big concern. I was looking recently on a report from Citibank and University of Oxford, and they are predicting about 47% of US jobs are at risk of automation, UK 35%, China, for obvious reasons, 77% of jobs are at risk. So jobs like receptionists, cooks, security guards, loan officers, drivers, factory workers, obviously, they're at risk. So effectively, any job that you can automate will be at risk. The question is, what are the skills that are difficult to automate and thus we need to focus on? And one of them is dexterity. So jobs like makeup artists will be very difficult to replace. Creativity, choreographers, artists, curators, social perception, nurses, coaches, university presidents. The big question is, he'll get me in his keynote, I know that. The big question is, will it be a net gain or a net loss at the end of the day? Okay, some people will be harmed, but the question is, what's the equation? Is it positive or negative? And from previous industrial revolutions, we've seen that at the end, we end up creating jobs. And I'm very hopeful and I'm confident that human nature, by our drive and creativity and the need to innovate, that we will always come up with an idea that requires somebody to do something, just create a job around that. And how many of you have seen the movie WALL-E? Yeah, so these are the ones that have kids, obviously, okay? So those of us that have kids and watch this animation movie, and I don't think we're going to get there. Effectively, a life where we're living on a robot takes us everywhere, we don't do anything, we're just sitting in front of a screen and not having a job, it's just because it's human nature. So we can put our bets on that.
I agree with you about technology increasing the number of jobs, not decreasing them. The net gain is going to be positive, of course. With every technological advancement, there has been a stage where people are losing jobs, people are gaining jobs, people are retraining. but there is always a net gain in jobs. So this is my view, at least. We're also thinking about like the safety and ethics of artificial intelligence. I think it all goes back to human nature. We have to be able to decide on how to use artificial intelligence, where to inject it, where not to inject it, and not rely on it as like it's going to solve all our problems. It's going to augment our capability. In terms of capability of a human, there's going to be levels of maturity. We're going to automate some of the processes, but I think eventually we're going to augment our capability in doing stuff. We will be able to use artificial intelligence to help us understand our environment more, make decisions, better decisions about what's going on with our life, with stuff we're doing, with specific procedures, not necessarily do the procedures for us. It will tell us, do this way instead of this way, watch out here, like use a magnifying glass here, use scissors here, use a laser here, whatever, but it will not replace humans, I think. It will just augment and amplify our capability. But we have to worry a bit about the ethics of it and about how to approach the general consensus between people on applying it.
All right, I believe we are out of time. And as we are all that stands between you and lunch, we're going to wrap it up here. A quick round of applause for all of our panelists.